I clearly remember the first time I met Lily. At that time, she had just entered college, a freshman full of enthusiasm but also full of confusion about the future. We met in the school's surfing club, where I had long been a member. Lily is not the best surfer. She was actually very weak, often being knocked down by the waves, choking on water, and just tripping over and over again. But it was her perseverance that made me unable to ignore it. Lily wasn't talented from the start, but she never gave up. No matter how many times she fails, she still gets up and continues surfing. And that is what I admire most about her. She doesn't give up easily, and she doesn't ask for attention or praise from anyone. She just works, learns, and improves herself every day. We started chatting more as we went on surfing sessions together. Gradually, I realized that Lily is a person with a very special personality. She speaks very little, always focusing on what she does, but there is a strength hidden behind that gentle appearance. During our discussions about surfing, she also began to open up to me, sharing about her family life and the difficulties she had to face. Lily is not the only one in the family with special abilities. She has a younger sister named Emma who is always favored by her family. Emma is the type of person who always achieves high results in study and life and is always the favorite child of her parents. And Lily, despite her best efforts, still feels ignored. Especially in the eyes of her parents, Emma is always the best. There is no place for her in the shadow of her younger sister. I can feel Lily's feelings. She always seeks to do everything well, but all her achievements seem not enough to satisfy her parents. They always seemed dissatisfied, not appreciative of what she did. She said that sometimes she feels like a shadow, living in the obscurity of others. Everyone only paid attention to Emma, and she was just standing in the background, quiet and mute. Lily didn't show any resentment, but I could see the fatigue in her, the desire to be recognized, to see her efforts as valuable. That's something I can't ignore. We talked about these things many late evenings. She talked about the expectations from her family, about having to live up to an image that she never really wanted. And I understand this is not only a war with her family, but also a war with herself. From that moment on, I began to feel like I was not just a friend, but the only person with whom Lily could share her whole heart. We started spending more time together outside of surfing sessions, and our friendship gradually deepened. Every time she shares about her life, dreams, and disappointments, I feel a part of the pain she is carrying within herself. But because of that, I am even more determined to help her find her own place, a place where she is not someone else's shadow. Lily is not someone who easily expresses her emotions. She rarely cries, rarely shows weakness. But in stories about my family and my sister, I see old wounds that never heal. Perhaps that's why she turned to surfing, as a way to relieve herself, to assert herself. Every time she crossed a wave, even if it was just standing firmly on the surfboard for a short second, I felt it was her own victory, not for anyone else. I don't know exactly when, but the feelings between us changed. The relationship is no longer just friendship. I've started to see Lily in a different way, not just as a weak surfer girl, but as a strong woman with big dreams. She is no longer an invisible person in the family, but a person with unique values, worthy of my respect and love. That feeling comes naturally. I don't plan on falling in love with Lily. At first, I just wanted to be a friend, someone who was always ready to be by her side whenever she needed it. But when we sat in a cafe together talking about life and the future, I realized I wanted something more. I love her resilience, love her sensitivity. She may never admit it, but I know, even just once, she felt the appreciation I have for her. As time passed, our relationship gradually deepened. I can't seem to separate from Lily, and I don't want to either. Anyway, I don't know how many people will be willing to be by her side in the most difficult moments. And I don't want to be a bystander in her life. The day we graduated, we both felt a little nervous about the future. We don't know where we will go or what we will do, but one thing is certain: we will move forward together. Lily is the only person I want by my side during the difficult times ahead. That feeling, that emotion, is something I can't give up. And I know no matter what, we won't have to face the future alone. We were both prepared, even though we weren't sure about everything. We had each other, and that's the most important thing. After graduation, our lives may have changed, but our feelings for each other have not faded. Even though we both faced huge challenges and choices in our future, Lily and I kept in touch, not just out of friendship, but out of something deeper, a connection that neither of us could easily let go of. Lily decided to stay in the city, look for a job, and continue to pursue her passion for surfing, knowing full well that this path is not easy. She is not someone who chooses a stable job, but someone who seeks a sense of freedom, like the waves she is familiar with. As for me, after working a few temporary jobs, I finally decided to go back and take another short-term course in marketing. I think it will be a reasonable step in building a career. But the most important thing is, we both still keep in touch, talk to each other about everything. Our conversations became longer and longer. Initially, they were stories about work and unfulfilled dreams. But then, when we got so familiar with each other, we started talking about deeper things that only those closest to us could understand. Lily started sharing more with me about her family. She no longer tried to hide her hurt feelings, but instead began talking about the problems she had faced over the years. Her family remains unchanged. Her parents continue to love Emma, the perfect younger sister, while Lily still has to try her best to gain their approval. She said that sometimes she feels like she doesn't belong in the family, like she's just part of a picture that someone else has painted. Lily once said that every time she did something, no matter how small, she expected a reaction from her parents, but it seemed they only cared about Emma. That made her feel like she was never good enough, never someone worthy of being loved the way she wanted. I could feel the exhaustion in Lily's voice every time she mentioned her family. She didn't blame them, but the hurt in her heart was something she couldn't hide. And in those conversations, I began to understand that Lily not only needed validation from her family, but also needed someone to listen, so she could share without feeling judged. One time, Lily asked me a question that I still remember clearly to this day. She said, "Why are you always by my side, even though I'm nothing special?" I don't know how to answer, because I don't fully understand why. My feelings for Lily are not something that can be easily explained. She is not a perfect person, nor is she someone who has an easy life. But it was her perseverance, her strength in her stumbles, and even the pain she carried in her heart that made me appreciate her even more. I answered Lily with a simple but sincere sentence. You don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. Maybe these words seem vague, but they are the truth that I believe. Lily doesn't need to change or become someone else to be worthy of my affection. I love her for what she is, for the way she lives, for what she has done to overcome every challenge in life. But Lily didn't believe me. She seems unable to understand that love and friendship are not things that need to be sought or proven. She always thinks that she must be excellent and perfect to be loved and accepted. That's why, even though I always tried to encourage her, she still couldn't escape that feeling of lack of confidence. One time, Lily and I decided to go on a beach trip together just to relax and temporarily forget the stress of work. We arrived at a quiet beach where there weren't many tourists, just crashing waves and soft white sand. That's where Lily can surf without anyone watching and where she can temporarily forget the pressures from her family. I remember that day very clearly. After we spent a few hours surfing, Lily sat exhausted on the sand, panting, but the smile on her face never faded. I sat next to her, looked out at the ocean and asked, "How do you feel?" Lily looked at me for a long moment, as if searching for the answer within herself. After a moment of silence, she gently said, "This is when I feel most myself. I don't need to do anything to prove anything. Just being here, surfing, feeling each wave is enough." At that moment, I understood that moments like that were what Lily was really looking for in life. It's not about recognition from others. It's not about perfection. It's about the feeling of being free, of being true to yourself. And I thought maybe I was looking for the same thing. Freedom in my own emotions, in our friendship, and in our relationship. Also on this trip, we had long conversations at night when the sky was full of stars and the ocean air was cool. Lily no longer kept her emotions inside. She talked about her family, about the injustice she felt over the years. And I just listen, don't judge, don't give any advice, simply because I know, sometimes, people just need someone by their side to listen to them. That feeling, that friendship, gradually becomes more important than ever. I don't know exactly where we're going, but I know that, no matter how hard it gets, I will always be there with Lily. We returned from our trip to the beach, but the feeling of connection, of the changes in the way we saw each other, still lingered. Conversations are becoming more and more frank, no longer vague or evasive statements like before. Lily, even though she always appears strong, still has something soft and needs to be protected. And I, despite always being there for her, also began to realize that I wasn't always able to help Lily the way I thought I could. A month after the trip, everything seemed to be back to normal. She was still busy with work. I was still continuing my marketing courses. But then, one day, I received a call from Lily. Her voice sounded more urgent than usual. "I need to see you. It's important," Lily said. And simply like that, I immediately knew she was in for something big. We met at a familiar coffee shop where every date has never-ending stories. But this time, the atmosphere between us was very different. Lily sat silently, holding a cup of coffee without drinking it. She seemed restless, and I could clearly sense the worry in her eyes. "Do you remember about my family matters?" Lily asked, breaking the silence. I nodded, a feeling of anxiety gradually spreading inside me. "What's wrong with you?" Lily looked at me for a long moment, as if trying to choose her words. Finally, she sighed and began to talk. It's not something I want to say, but lately I've been so tired of keeping everything a secret. I don't want to say it, but maybe you're the only person I can trust." Lily started talking about Emma, her younger sister who always received unconditional love from her parents. Although I partly knew about the difference in the way Emma and Lily were treated, I didn't know that the story behind it was so profound. I don't understand why they love Emma so much. She's not perfect, but she's always considered the center of the family. From childhood to adulthood, I always had to prove I was good enough, but they never paid attention to that, Lily said in a choked voice. She bowed her head, clutching the cup tightly. The feeling of sadness inside me rose again. I can't imagine the pressure Lily must be under. The feelings of being abandoned, of being seen as someone not important enough, may have made her more resilient, but at the same time, made her vulnerable. And there's something else I can't tell anyone. I can't continue to live in Emma's shadow forever, but I also don't want to hurt my family. Lily continued, her eyes beginning to water. I sat still, not knowing what to do to comfort her. My feelings for Lily are different now, no longer just a close friend, but someone I really want to protect, want to help her overcome her unspoken pain. I knew I had to do something, but couldn't find any way to make Lily feel better right away. "Lily, you don't have to prove anything," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I'm here. And I always believe you deserve the love and recognition you don't get from your family." She was silent for a moment, her eyes still looking straight at me. "You know, sometimes I feel like I'm living in a movie where everything around me is a lie. Everyone believes I'm fine, but actually, I'm on the brink of exhaustion. That's when I realize that not everything is simply love and care. Sometimes a person just needs to be able to tell the secrets hidden in their hearts to be understood and accepted. Lily, you don't have to be strong all your life. I'm here and you don't have to bear everything alone." I feel like I need to emphasize that because I know that Lily is used to facing every difficulty on her own. After that, we had a long talk. Lily talked about the feelings she couldn't share with anyone else, about how she tried to do everything right according to her family's wishes, but in the end still didn't receive the recognition she deserved. She shared that every time her family got together, she felt like an outsider, never the center, never someone her parents really cared about. I understand, but you can't keep living in their shadow forever. You need to find a way to live for yourself, I said, trying to offer the encouragement I thought was necessary. Lily raised her eyes to look at me. Something seemed to change in her eyes. Perhaps she realized that family is not the only thing that defines a person's value. I can't help her change everything, but I hope I can help her see herself in a different way, in a way without having to compare herself to anyone. When the conversation ended, Lily looked at me, then smiled lightly. Thank you. I know you're always here, but today, I feel like I'm truly understood. Not everyone has this feeling. It was a turning point. I don't know what the future will be like, but I believe that from that moment, Lily began to understand that she deserved a better life, a life not dominated by the ghosts of the past or the expectations of her family, and I no longer feel lost in this friendship anymore. After that conversation, I felt that Lily seemed to be more relieved, but there was still something that couldn't completely go away. To me, it's a sign of positive change, but I know the road ahead is still very long. Lily was not someone who opened up easily, and I had a feeling that what she revealed to me was just the tip of the iceberg. Still, I started to notice positive changes. She started participating in more activities, instead of just hanging around work and worries in her head. Sometimes we meet on weekends, go to the movies, or simply sit for coffee. Each time, I clearly feel that we are gradually regaining the connection that was somewhat lacking before, but I still can't forget the moment when Lily looked at me and said that she didn't know how to get rid of the feeling that she was just a shadow in her family. That stuck with me, and I knew for Lily, getting over it wasn't easy. One day after having coffee with Lily, I received a text from her. "Can you come see me tonight? I have something to say." Even though the tone of the message was calm, I sensed an uneasiness in it. This time, I don't think this is just a simple conversation. That night, I went to Lily's apartment. She opened the door with a slight smile, but her eyes looked away, as if trying to hide the thoughts swirling in her head. I felt something unusual, but decided not to ask right away and just followed her into the living room. "Please sit down. I have something to share," Lily said, then sat down across from me, fiddling with the teacup. "You seem worried. Is something wrong?" I asked, unable to hide the concern in my voice. Lily sighed, then looked straight into my eyes. I've decided to talk to my family. It's time for me to stop living in Emma's shadow anymore, but I don't know where to start." I remained silent, listening to Lily's every word. This is her big step, and I know not everyone dares to face the harsh truth of themselves and their family like this. You know, I tried so hard to make them proud, but in the end, it was Emma who they noticed. I can't go on living like that anymore, Lily continued, her voice choking. Lily's story hit me like a thunderbolt. I understand how she feels, but I cannot imagine the level of hurt she has gone through all these years. It seemed that all of her efforts were ignored, and no one realized the effort and suffering that Lily had endured. Every time her family gathered, Emma was always the center, but Lily always felt like she was just a small, unimportant part. "I will be with you, no matter what you decide," I told her, constantly hoping she would find her own liberation. But deep down, I also understand that this is not simple. Lily looked at me, her eyes brightening a little, as if finding some light in the darkness. "I know you're always here, but I feel like I've been pushed to the edge. I don't want to keep being deprived of the recognition and love that I deserve." We sat in silence for a while. No one said anything else. Lily seemed to be rethinking the words she had just said. She is not someone who shares her feelings easily, and every time she decides to open up, it is a big step for her. Finally, Lily broke the silence. I've thought a lot about this. My family isn't bad people, but they have their own way of loving. Perhaps I'm too used to not being noticed, but now I realize that I deserve better. I smiled, feeling a little relieved inside. Lily is finding a way to change not only for herself but also for her family. She's no longer someone who's just resigned. Good. You've made the right decision. But you have to remember, family can't change overnight. They will need time to understand you, but it's important that you stay steadfast in what you want, I said, trying to help her see the problem more realistically. Lily nodded, her expression serious. I know, but at least I have the right to decide my own life, and I don't want to be caught up in the game my family has planned for me anymore. A feeling of peace spread through me. I know that Lily is moving forward, even though the road is not easy. And I will always be here, supporting her no matter how difficult things get. Lily's story is not a fairy tale with an immediately happy ending. But at least, she began to know that she could change her fate, and that I, the only friend she trusted, would never leave her. Lily decided to face her family, but I know that decision was not easy. She has hidden the hurt for so many years, and now, when faced with the opportunity to change, she is afraid of being hurt again. But I also realize that if I don't do anything, she will forever live in that shadow, never being herself. A few days after that conversation, Lily became more thoughtful. She no longer smiled brightly like before. Instead, she had deep thoughts. Sometimes she sat and stared out the window, as if she was pondering something very important. I didn't dare to push her. I just quietly stayed by her side when she needed it. But I understood Lily was very worried. Worrying about her family, about whether they understand her, and whether they will accept her change or not. A week later, Lily informed me that she was scheduled to talk with her family this weekend. I'm going home on Saturday. I don't know where this is going, but I can't live in silence anymore, she told me in a phone call. She seemed to have prepared herself for this confrontation, but I couldn't help but feel nervous. For me, family is where each member finds protection and love, but for Lily, family is where she feels forgotten. I can't imagine the emotions she must be going through in front of people she loves, but never acknowledge her. On Saturday, I knew Lily was coming home. She didn't tell me exactly how the meeting went, but I could sense the tension in her voice as we talked that evening. "Can you come here?" Lily asked, her voice faintly tired. I immediately left the house and drove to her apartment. When I arrived, I saw Lily sitting on the sofa, her face pale, her eyes filled with dismay. She didn't say anything, just clapped her hand next to her as if signaling me to sit down. "My family," Lily began, but stopped, took a deep breath, and continued. "They don't understand. They still think I'm just making a fuss. My mother tells me to act like a child, and my father says I should accept reality. They always think Emma is the only one who can do things right." I felt Lily's pain rising inside me. The words of her mother and father, the people she still hoped would understand her, only made her feel even more worthless. I cannot imagine her feeling, standing in front of her parents and not being able to make them realize the hurt deep inside her heart. "I tried," Lily said, her voice choking. "I did everything to make them proud. But in the end, I was nothing. They never looked at me as a girl, but always looked at me as an appendage. I was silent, not knowing what to say. I understand that feeling all too well. Seeing myself as a shadow, forever standing behind everyone else, never receiving the recognition I deserve." Lily looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "You know, I can't continue like this anymore. I don't want to be anyone's shadow. I don't want to just live for them, forgetting who I am." I held Lily's hand, feeling the coldness of her hand. "You did the right thing. Even though this wasn't easy, at least you spoke up. Don't let anyone decide your worth, especially your family. You deserve respect." Lily nodded, but I knew she was still heartbroken. "I know, but after this, I don't know what I'm going to do. I've tried for so long to fit in with them, to be who they want me to be, but it seems like I can never be that person. I feel sorry for her, but I also understand that only she can decide where she will go and what she will do. Her family, no matter how much they love them, cannot change what has been ingrained in Lily's heart for so long. You won't have to do everything alone, I said. I'm here, and I'll always be here. No matter what happens, I'll walk through it with you. Lily smiled weakly, her eyes shining with some hope, even though the pain still lingered. Thank you, I really do. You're the only person I can trust. I don't know what I would do without you. We sat quietly for a long time, saying nothing more. I know Lily still needs time to heal the wounds in her heart, but at least she has a friend, someone who can accompany her on her journey to find herself. Lily will never be able to change the past, but I hope she can change her future. Because she deserves a happy life, not as anyone's shadow, but as herself. That fall passed with changes that I had never imagined. Lily gradually learns to stand up from past wounds. Those roads are not always smooth. The times she had to face her family and friends, who still didn't really understand everything she was going through, were still very challenging. But I saw in her a new strength, a resilience that I had never seen before. A week after that evening's conversation, Lily decided to see her family again. But this time it wasn't to try to change them, but to explain to them the change in herself. She called me right after meeting. Honey. Her voice sounded more relieved, though still a little tense. I told them everything I felt. I didn't hide it anymore. I told them I couldn't live for them anymore. I had to live for myself. Lily was silent for a moment, then continued. My dad still doesn't completely understand, but my mom cried. I didn't think she would cry. She said I was the only child she loved, even though she didn't know how to love me properly. I smiled, feeling relieved to hear these words. For the first time, her family is able to realize that Lily is not a child who just listens, but a woman with the right to live her life the way she chooses. You know, Lily continued, I feel somewhat relieved. Even though it's not over yet, I don't feel like I have to live in the dark anymore. That was the first time I felt a sense of freedom in her voice. A freedom that I know she has craved for so many years. She is finding herself again, and it seems that this time she has found a different path, a path that no one can decide for her anymore. That weekend, Lily invited me to a small party she was hosting at her apartment. That evening, the atmosphere was light, filled with laughter and music. There were some of her friends, and of course, her family. Lily's friends are still the only people who are always by her side, sharing her joys and sorrows. They didn't judge her, didn't try to change her, but simply loved and accepted her as she was. Lily seems to have returned to herself. She smiles more, talks more freely, and no longer carries with her the worries and complexes like before. I couldn't help but feel proud of her. Even though she still has difficulty facing her family, I know that Lily is strong enough to accept and love herself. Thank you, Lily said, as I walked her home from the party. I don't think I would have been able to do this without you by my side. You helped me find myself again. I don't know how to respond. Every word I said seemed so small compared to what Lily had gone through. But I understand that sometimes what people need is just a presence, a companionship. And I did it. I'll always be here, I said, looking into her eyes with a sincerity that I thought she sensed. For the rest of your life, if you need me, I'll be here. A few months later, Lily began to change significantly. She is no longer closed to herself, no longer afraid of other people's eyes. She began taking classes that she loved, pursuing passions that she had always dismissed because she thought she was not worthy. She enrolled in drawing lessons and began participating in an art group. She finds joy in creating and sharing her works. I remember the first time she showed me the painting she had just completed. She was filled with joy when she talked about it, and I knew it was a part of her that she had found again. With her family, although things have not always been easy, Lily has gradually learned how to communicate and share her feelings. The conversations with her mother became more open, and they began to understand that Lily was not a child in need of protection, but an adult with the right to make her own decisions. I also couldn't help but see the change in her. Lily is no longer a silent girl standing on the sidelines, but a strong, confident woman full of desire for life. I wonder if she ever feels regretful about what she went through, about the wounds she has endured over the years, but I know, if anything, the injuries have helped her become more resilient and mature. Lily is no longer the same person. She has found a new path, a path of her own. And I, as a witness to that journey, will never forget the feeling of pride and love when I saw her step out of the darkness to reach the light. "Honey," Lily said one day as we sat together, "I thank you for everything. I don't know if I could have done this without you. You helped me find myself, helped me see that I deserved a happy life." I just smiled and gently replied, "You did it all, Lily. I'm just a small part of your journey." Lily smiled, and I knew she was ready to move on, not just for anyone else, but for herself. Story 2. At our son's college graduation, my husband said that he was taking our life savings and leaving with his younger assistant. "No problem," I answered with a smile. "But first look at this," and gave him an envelope. I never thought my son's college graduation would turn out this way when he opened too. The University of Minneapolis ceremony was flawless. There are blue sky, happy families, and the contagious happiness of success in the air. I was really proud of Nathan since he had put in so much effort to earn his business degree. However, what ought to have been one of the most joyous days of our life became something very different. I'm Anna, and I believed I knew my husband, Benjamin, after we were married for 25 years. After raising our kid and creating a pleasant life in Minneapolis, I thought we were content. Benjamin ran his own consulting business, and I was a financial counselor. Despite our lack of riches, we had diligently saved throughout the years in preparation for our son's future and retirement. Benjamin was behaving oddly that afternoon when we got together for pictures following the ceremony. He looked around anxiously and continued to examine his phone. Although Rebecca, his assistant, was present to assist with organizing the celebratory meal, there was something strange about her appearance. She had been employed by Benjamin for 2 years and was youthful, perhaps in her 30s. The joyous champagne toast was when it happened. I thought Benjamin, holding a glass of champagne, would say something heartfelt about Nathan's accomplishment. Instead, he said, "I have something important to share with everyone," clearing his throat. I felt sick to my stomach when he said that. That was a look I had seen before. In my profession, I had seen innumerable people attempt to conceal their anxiety before making decisions that might change their lives. "I'm going," he said, his tone calm but icy. "I'm in love with Rebecca, and we're beginning a new life together. To guarantee our fresh start, I've already moved our savings." The ensuing hush was deafening. Our guests shuffled uneasily in their seats as Nathan's face became pale. Rebecca's hand was resting possessively on Benjamin's arm as she stood there grinning triumphantly. However, I felt oddly at ease rather than the shock and destruction Benjamin obviously anticipated. Perhaps because I had anticipated this for months, perhaps because I had already planned for this very situation. I felt the weight of the envelope within my handbag as I reached for it. Examining our joint accounts 3 months prior, I had discovered the first warning sign: a string of odd transactions and high lodging expenses. I'm trained to identify abnormalities because I work as a financial counselor. Furthermore, they weren't arbitrary purchases. They have a pattern. On the days that Benjamin claimed to be working late, the allegations consistently surfaced. Since Minneapolis is a small city, the same hotel name kept appearing in the downtown market, which was only 2 blocks away from his workplace. Every Wednesday evening, the same suite every time. I refrained from confronting him right away. Rather, I began to delve farther. I had 20 years of experience working with numbers, which had taught me patience and accuracy. Every transaction, receipt, and questionable activity in our accounts was monitored by me. The evidence grew progressively. Reservations for 2 people to eat dinner at upscale restaurants, Tiffany's jewelry purchases, and first-class airline tickets to unheard-of Caribbean locations. The transfers of offshore accounts followed. Benjamin believed he was being clever by concealing funds in an account in the Cayman Islands, but he had overlooked an important point. For the previous 15 years, I had been in charge of our taxes. Every real account, investment, and cent we would save together was known to me. Like neon lights, these new transactions were conspicuous. My buddy Laura, who works in human resources at Benjamin's company, provided the last confirmation. Her voice was uncertain when she phoned me. A March afternoon. "I think you should know something," she stated to Anna. "Rebecca just submitted a transfer request to your husband's new Bermuda satellite office." I realized then that Benjamin wasn't only having an affair. He had an escape plan. Everything came together: the planned disclosure, the secret accounts, the concealed funds. He had purposefully picked Nathan's graduation, hoping that the public setting would avoid a scene. He was unaware that I had already been in touch with Patricia, my attorney. We had worked together for weeks to get everything ready: the proof of tax fraud, the asset freeze, and the divorce petition. I discreetly transferred our funds to a different account, kept track of all questionable transactions, and compiled evidence of his extramarital affair. As Benjamin completed his speech, I watched his smug face and took another sip of champagne. He believed he had planned the ideal getaway. He was unaware that I was about to give him my own well-thought-out surprise. Rebecca dared to wave a first-class ticket in front of everyone after Benjamin's declaration. She gloated, her voice brimming with glee. "Our flight to Bermuda departs tonight. With your funds, we've already located the ideal oceanfront home." Stunned murmurs filled the room. Nathan's graduation cap was still on his head, and I could see his hands shaking with rage. Our family members and friends shuffled uneasily in their chairs, uncertain about whether to stay for what was sure to be a heated argument or to leave. Benjamin turned to face me, a look of both relief and sympathy on his face. "You'll have enough of me for several months. Costs," he said generously. "That seems more than reasonable to me, taking into account what?" I cut myself off. "Steady. Considering that I oversaw our money while you concentrated on your job, and that I assisted in starting your consulting business from the ground up, or the fact that I've been aware of your strategy for some months." His smile wavered a bit. Rebecca gripped his arm more tightly. "You mean you've known what?" She made a demand. Her self-assured exterior somewhat falters. I prepared a big manila envelope and took it out of my handbag. "You know, Benjamin, you really ought to have been more cautious with your email password if you take pleasure in your attention to detail. The one you have been using for 20 years. Nathan's birthday. Not very creative." His face started to lose its color. I could see him making calculations in his head as he tried to recall which emails may be in the package. "You had a good plan. I'll grant you that." I kept getting to my feet to confront him. "You assumed I wouldn't cause a scene while you were setting up the Bermuda account and organizing this Nathan's graduation announcement, but you overlooked something important about me." "What is that, too?" His voice was a little raspy, but he managed to inquire. "I oversee more than just the money for our family. This is what I do for a living. You honestly believed that I wouldn't be aware of the transfers, the Cayman Islands secret account, and hotel fees." I grinned as I watched his eyes widen with every new insight. "Or perhaps you assumed Laura and HR wouldn't inform me of Rebecca's desire to be transferred to your new office in Bermuda." Benjamin had trembling hands. Right now. Rebecca had stepped back, doubt replacing her victorious smile. "Before you depart for your new life," I held out the envelope and said, "Here, consider taking a look at this. Think of it as my present to you both for graduating." Benjamin's fingers were shaking when he grasped the envelope. I relished the occasion. All I had planned and all I had found was going to be revealed. What's the best part? He didn't know what was going to happen. Benjamin opened the letter with shaking hands. He brought out the stack of papers, and I watched with silent enjoyment. He glanced at the first page, his eyes widening. His well-laid preparations appeared to be derided by the divorce petition, which had already been filed and stamped. What? What on earth is this? He looked up at me incredulously as he mumbled. I enjoyed the crisp flavor of the champagne as I took another drink. "Well, a little reading before your romantic retreat," I answered politely. "You may wish to focus especially on page 3. As she read the bank statement, Rebecca looked over his shoulder, her immaculately manicured nails pressing into his arm. "Shown the current amount of 0 in our joint accounts. Weeks prior, every money had been lawfully moved to an account that was exclusively in my name." Benjamin stammered, his cheeks flushed. "You can't do this." "Our money is that. Our funds?" I raised an eyebrow and interrupted. "Do you mean the cash you intended to pilfer? The funds that you have been gradually transferring to foreign accounts?" I pointed to the following group of papers. "Speaking of which, your innovative accounting techniques have piqued the IRS's curiosity." He glanced through the pages, the color draining from his cheeks, receipts from hotels, bills from restaurants, printouts of emails describing his liaison with Rebecca, including their preparations for this disclosure. Every page was another nail in his escape plan's coffin. Now Nathan was standing next to me, rustling his graduation robe as he approached. "Dad," he added in an emotionally charged tone, "of all days, you were actually going to do this today." Benjamin was unable to look our son in the eye. Rather, he hurriedly went through the rest of the documents until he came to the court order that frozen his assets. He almost dropped it, because his hands were shaking so much. "It's all frozen." "Calmly," I explained, "both your company and personal accounts. Even the cute little nest egg you believed you had stashed away in the Caymans. My attorney is very meticulous." Rebecca no longer had that victorious look on her face. "Sweetheart, what's going on? What is she trying to say? Is everything frozen?" I turned mock sympathetically towards her. "That implies your sugar daddy is officially broke, sweetie." "Not exactly broke, though, just unable to get any of his funds. It appears that Bermuda's beachfront property may have to wait, so I hope you preserved your return ticket." The visitors were astonished and silent as they watched. Laura, a friend of mine who had helped reveal their scheme, made an unsuccessful attempt to conceal a smirk behind her palm, while his wife Catherine muttered. Thomas, Benjamin's younger brother, shook his head in disdain. "Well done, Anna. Everything is damaged by you." Benjamin gave a hiss. His facade of dominance fell apart. I took a step towards him and lowered my voice to his level. "No, everything was damaged by you. The instant you chose to turn on our family, all I'm doing is making sure you deal with the fallout from your decisions." He lost his grip on the pile of papers, which fell to the ground like leaves. Rebecca hurried to retrieve them. The realization that their flawless plan was falling apart in front of everyone caused her face to flush with embarrassment. When Benjamin arrived at the last document, an official letter from the board of directors of his company, his poise broke. The paper crumpled at the edges as his hands held it so firmly. Citing possible abuse of authority and misappropriation of corporate resources, the letter called for an immediate probe into his connection with Rebecca. He proceeded to the board. His voice was husky with amazement as he muttered. I calmly said, "Actually, I didn't have to. Your improper behavior with a subordinate was apparently observed by another person. For months, the ethics committee has been keeping an eye on you." Rebecca's expression turned pallid. "What implications does this have for my job?" "Well, I responded, putting down my glass of champagne. Although it could be difficult to find another employment in Minneapolis, given the circumstances, I think the HR word is instant termination. Benjamin straightened abruptly, trying to get everything under control again. This is absurd. I started the business from scratch. They are unable to simply, yes, they can. They have too. I chopped through the boards because I was worried about possible legal action. You're not the first executive, it seems, to believe that he might utilize his position to recruit younger workers. Now holding his graduation cap, Nathan took a step forward. Dad, I'm shocked that you did this. To Mom, to our family, to all that we have constructed. You don't get it, son. Benjamin reached for Nathan's arm and begged, marriages simply don't work out sometimes. Nathan recoiled from his contact. Don't attempt to defend this. On the day of my graduation, you were planning to take Mom's funds and flee with your helper. I completely get it. Now that she was calmer, Rebecca tried to save what she could. Benjamin, they are unable to provide any proof concerning us. We can combat this. In the stressful setting, my chuckle was clear and crisp. The email exchange in which you two devised the entire plot, including the announcement made today. The witness testimonies from your colleagues and the hotel receipts. They can prove a lot, in my opinion. A few of our visitors had discreetly left, but many were still there, taking in the spectacle with a mix of amazement and interest. Thomas, Benjamin's brother, came up and put a helping hand on Nathan's shoulder. For what length of time? With a tone of disappointment, Thomas inquired, How long did you intend to leave your family behind? Benjamin remained silent, which was incriminating. Instead, Rebecca responded in a defensively angry, high-pitched voice. For 18 months, we have been in love. We ought not should have to conceal it. 18 months? I tapped my chin reflectively as I pondered. Fascinating. I have been recording everything for precisely that amount of time. Every meeting, every transaction, every small lie. I suspected it might be useful at some point. While Benjamin had been carefully organizing his escape, the realization slammed into his face. I had been ahead of the game, subtly constructing a strong case against him, his ideal scheme. He envisioned starting a new life with his youthful assistant, his money, which he had carefully concealed. It was all slipping like sand between his fingers. Benjamin tried desperately one last time to save his collapsing world. He lowered his voice to the persuasive tone he had so frequently employed in business negotiations and said, Anna, be reasonable. We can figure something out. Divide everything equally. 50-50, keep it civil. I repeated, my voice full of real laughter. Of what precisely? You attempted to conceal the money from the company that is going to fire you. Or do you mean the house that is registered in my name alone? He jerked his head up. Just in your name, what do you mean? Do you recall missing the mortgage refinance meeting last month because you were too busy? The documents I brought home were just signed by you. I grinned as I saw his face light up with understanding. Benjamin, you really ought to read documents before signing them. Only my name is now associated with the house. Rebecca grabbed Benjamin's arm, panic rising in her voice. What about the Bermuda property? Our deposit frozen along with every other transaction you've made in the last 6 months. I replied, though I suspect the property developer might be interested to know the funds were obtained fraudulently. Benjamin's face contorted with rage. You vindictive? Bye, Dad. Nathan's sharp voice cut through the air. Don't you dare finish that sentence. The remaining guests watched in stunned silence as Benjamin's carefully crafted facade finally shattered completely. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time he looked his age. I've worked with your lawyer, Patricia. I continued calmly. She's prepared a fairly generous settlement offer, considering the circumstances. You can sign it now, or we can let the judge decide after reviewing all this evidence. You have an option. Rebecca stepped away from Benjamin, her young face etched with dawning horror. You promised me security, she whispered to him. You said we'd have everything we needed. Oh, honey, I said, almost feeling sorry for her. He promised me security 225 years ago. Look how well that turned out. Thomas approached his brother, disgust evident on his face. The family lake house you've been maintaining for Mom and Dad. Have you been using that for your little rendezvous, too? Benjamin's silence was answer enough. I'll tell them myself. Thomas spat. They should know what their son has become. Nathan, still in his graduation robes, squared his shoulders. I think it's time for you both to leave, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You've ruined enough of today already. I watched as Benjamin's world collapsed around him. His son's graduation, which he'd chosen as the stage for his grand exit, had instead become the scene of his ultimate humiliation. The whispers and stares of our guests, the disgust on his brother's face, the rejection in his son's eyes. It was all crashing down on him at once. The settlement papers will be at Patricia's office on Monday, I said, gathering my purse. Don't bother trying to access any accounts before then. And Benjamin. I paused, meeting his defeated gaze. I suggest flying coach to Bermuda. First class might be a bit out of your price range now. As Benjamin and Rebecca slunk away from the graduation celebration, I turned to our remaining guest with a bright smile. Well, now that the unexpected entertainment is over, shall we properly celebrate Nathan's achievement? Laura rushed forward to hug me. Anna, that was absolutely brilliant, she whispered. I've never seen Benjamin speechless before. Nathan wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Mom, I can't believe you've been planning this for months without letting on. How did you stay so calm? Years of handling other people's finances taught me patience, I replied, squeezing his hand and watching your father's schemes fall apart was worth every second of waiting. Thomas raised his glass to Anna, who just gave us the most satisfying show of justice I've ever witnessed, and to Nathan, whose graduation will certainly be remembered for years to come. The remaining guests laughed and clinked their glasses. The tension in the room dissolved into a celebratory atmosphere as everyone gathered around to congratulate Nathan properly. Catherine, Thomas's wife, pulled me aside. That letter from the board. You timed everything perfectly, didn't you? I grinned. The ethics committee had been building their case for months. I just made sure their announcement coincided with his planned escape. Timing is crucial in money and retribution. As we shifted the celebration to the restaurant, I had reserved conspicuously, not the one Benjamin had planned to utilize. I felt lighter than I have in years. The weight of Benjamin's treachery and deception had been replaced with a sense of success and liberation. Nathan leaned forward and whispered, "Best graduation gift ever, Mom." 2 weeks later, I sat across from Patricia in her downtown Minneapolis office, examining the final divorce settlement. Benjamin had signed everything without protest. The fight entirely gone from him following our graduation day encounter. The company's ethical inquiry had found far more than I'd uncovered. 3 more teenage aides have come forward with accounts of Benjamin's improper conduct. The board had sacked him immediately. His reputation in the business community severely shattered. Rebecca, facing her own career difficulties, had rapidly abandoned their dreams for a new life together. Last I heard, she'd relocated back to Chicago to live with her parents. Her hopes of being a trophy wife in Bermuda were completely dashed. The house is safe. Patricia stated that the proof of tax evasion has been sent over to the appropriate authorities and that the assets are safeguarded, arranging the completed documents. Despite the circumstances, I would say that this divorce was one of the cleanest ones I have ever handled. Nathan took me out to supper that night after accepting a job offer in Minneapolis. I've been thinking about what you did, Mom, and how you deliberately manage things. Would you be interested in providing my new business with any financial advice? His belief in me made me grin, but I could be intrigued. Before signing any documents, I hope you've learnt to read the fine print. He chuckled. Our entire family will remember that lesson, I promise. While we savored our meal, I was calm, Getting even isn't always the greatest form of retaliation. The goal is to emerge out stronger, smarter, and prepared for whatever is ahead. Story 3. My husband sent me a picture of himself and his 23-year-old girlfriend at our vacation house along with divorce papers via email. I quietly drank my morning coffee and said, "The house is mine now." "Are you certain of that?" And disabled both his email and phone. Little did he know, it was 7:15 a.m. I was in Nashville when I got the email that broke my heart. Unaware that her father had just blown our lives up with a single message, my 1-year-old daughter Emma was blissfully chattering in her high chair. The topic line was straightforward. Let's go on. When I opened the attachment and saw the picture, I nearly spilt my coffee. My spouse of 5 years, Donald, encircled a young, blonde woman who couldn't have been more than 23. Our lake cottage, a vacation property we purchased only a year ago, was in front of them. It was the same house where we had spent many weekends discussing our future plans. The email said, "I now own the house. I've already moved in with Amber. My lawyer will be sending over the divorce papers. Don't struggle with it. I am the owner of the deed." I felt my hands trembling as I placed down my coffee mug. Not out of terror, though. No, this was just my anger building. Donald genuinely believed that he could just give me divorce papers via email and take our vacation house, the house I had purchased with my business's earnings. He was unaware of what was about to happen. I observed our kid playing with her meal, still naive and joyful. I then took a quick look at the framed picture hanging on our kitchen wall. On our wedding day, Donald and I were beaming, as if we had everything all out. 5 years of marriage. And he decided to finish it this way, with a picture of himself with a lady almost half my age and a smug email. I inhaled deeply before picking up my phone. Before I clicked block, my finger briefly lingered over Donald's contact details. I then opened my email and replied with 2 short sentences. "Are you certain of that? You should thoroughly review the documentation." I smiled, clicked send, blocked his email, and turned back to my kid. I was constantly undervalued by Donald. He viewed me as the understanding spouse who had helped him with his profession while also starting my own side company. He likely assumed that I would cry and even plead with him to change his mind, but he had overlooked one important aspect of me. Being careless about safeguarding my assets did not lead to the success of my business. In hindsight, I should have anticipated this. There were signs. I ignored minor warning signs because I was too preoccupied with managing our new baby and my expanding business. Over the previous 3 months, Donald had been visiting the lake house on a regular basis for work, saying he required quiet time to work on a major corporate merger. I supported his professional decisions while starting my own business from the ground up. I was already operating a profitable internet store when we first met 6 years ago. But Donald pretended it was simply a fun pastime. He enjoyed sharing with others how he had assisted me in making it a reality. The reality? Since we were married, the worth of my business has tripled, all via my own hard work and strategic planning. I had thought of the lake home, the ideal retreat for our family. It's remote enough to feel like a true getaway, yet close enough to Nashville for weekend getaways. Donald had insisted on having his name appear on the deed for tax considerations, even though I had paid for it in full with the earnings from my business. He said that although I had consented, I had first had my lawyer prepare a number of extremely detailed paperwork pertaining to the real ownership of the property. Donald had been particularly aloof last week, using our home office phone for hours at a time. He became defensive when I questioned him about the merger, accusing me of not comprehending the intricacies of corporate economics. Rich, coming from a guy whose financial portfolio I'd secretly been managing for the previous 3 years, I took up Emma from her high chair and hugged her close, inhaling in her beautiful baby aroma. Her eyes were Donald's, but I was determined. It was already evident in the way she approached each new task. Now that I was looking at her, I was more determined. It was no longer just about me. It was also about safeguarding her future. With Emma on my hip, I made my way to my home office and turned on my laptop. I sent the paperwork indicating I had bought the lake house to my lawyer via email in a matter of minutes. Next, I viewed the stream from the security camera I had put on the property, another safeguard Donald knew nothing about. Everything had been captured on camera. Each visit, each visitor, each betrayal. Amber may have been celebrating her win at the lake home, but she was unaware that she was the subject of a film that would play a significant role in my divorce case. It buzzed on my phone. Julia, my helper Rachel, texted me, "This is something you must see." A link to Amber's Instagram page was included, dozens of pictures of her with Donald dated back months. She even wore my clothing and used my belongings in several of the photos that were taken in our bedroom at the lake house. In the most recent post, she was seen showing off a huge diamond band that belonged to my grandmother. Donald had promised that we would give Emma the ring on her 18th birthday. I was ill. This was not a new incident. Before Emma was even born, this had been happening. 8 months ago, Amber proudly displayed a key to the lake house in one of the pictures, reading "Home Sweet Home" with my eyes and love heart as a caption. Moving in together is a new phase, when our infant kept me up all night. A woman who had just graduated from college had been playing house with Donald. His professional travels coincided exactly with the dates on the pictures. He had always stated that he needed to check on the lake cottage, which was why he was working late every weekend. All of it had been false. My hands are trembling. I launched the banking app. The second blow came at that moment. I put money into a joint account for Emma's college fund, but it was empty. Every cent. Almost $100,000. Lost. Transferred out yesterday to an account I didn't recognize. The wrath I'd felt before turned into something cold and calculated. I phoned my bank immediately, then my lawyer. I had confirmation in an hour. For months, Donald had been methodically transferring funds in anticipation of this day. He had even attempted, but failed, to access my company accounts. At least those were safeguarded by separate financial systems and unbreakable contracts. I was talking to the attorneys on the phone when Rachel phoned. "Julia, there's more." A number of screenshots from Amber's private Facebook page were forwarded to me by her. The girl had been boasting to her pals about how she had found a wealthy older guy and how they intended to demand the full value of his uninteresting wife. Even jokes about how unaware I was and how preoccupied I was with my small internet store to see what was going on were included in the communications. They had no idea that my small internet store had tripled my fortune. In order to give Donald the impression that my company was only successful and not extremely profitable, I had kept that knowledge secret. He had never been able to examine my company's books well enough to fully comprehend what I had created because of his ego. I glanced at Emma, who was now soundly sleeping in her playpen. "Don't worry, darling daughter," I whispered. "Daddy is going to learn a valuable lesson from Mommy about the undervaluation of women in the corporate world." Over the following several hours, I was quite busy. Sarah, my lawyer, showed up to my house shortly before noon, and we sat in my home office going over paperwork. Emma and Rachel had a snooze upstairs while maintaining watch. I had increased the house's security. I had a feeling Donald wouldn't accept my email reply. He's not as smart as he believes, though. Looking over the lake home paperwork, Sarah said, "We have unquestionable evidence that your company's finances were used to buy the home, even if the deed is in his name. The contracts, the transfer documents, and even the emails in which he acknowledges that it was your money. Everything is here." I pulled up my laptop's security camera feeds and nodded. "There's more. Take a look at this." Throughout the previous months, the video captured Donald and Amber coming inside the lake house at different occasions. However, Sarah was particularly intrigued by the video that was shot 2 days ago. It included Donald hauling box after box of household goods, including a few artworks I had bought with the money I made from my business. Sarah noted that it was an attempt to steal company property. For tax reasons, the art collection was bought via your business. The paperwork is with us. At that moment, a call from an unidentified number appeared on my phone. I switched it to speaker mode. Don't you think you're really intelligent? Donald's tone was abrasive and irate. Julia, check your work email. My solicitors have also been quite busy. I felt sick to my stomach as I opened my email. In an emergency petition, Donald's solicitors claimed that my company was founded on his contacts and experience. During the divorce process, they were requesting temporary control of my company's finances as well as a thorough audit. You would make a sincere effort to keep me company. My heart was pounding, but I spoke steadily. I founded the business before I ever met you. You constructed. He chuckled icily. Who do you believe provided you with all of these business contacts? Who put you in touch with the appropriate people? Without me, Julia, you would be nothing. Amber is aware that she knows how to express gratitude. Sarah was already typing frantically on her laptop when I turned to her and silenced the phone. She gestured with her finger. Hold on. Donald. The phone was unmuted by me, purchasing time. Give your actions a lot of thought. Yes, my solicitors will contact me regarding Emma as well. You can't be a good mother because you're too preoccupied with your valuable business. Amber gets along well with children. She was a nanny once. The idea of taking Emma chilled my blood. But Sarah brought her laptop to me before I could reply. A 3-year-old email that Donald had sent to a buddy bemoaning my success was displayed on the screen. She doesn't need my assistance because she will not even consider my business advice. She is correct. Her business is now worth more than my yearly wage. It's embarrassing. Into the phone, I grinned. I just emailed your lawyer something, Donald. Before threatening my business further, you might want to ask him. What are you discussing? Let's pretend you didn't realize how private your email archives were. Call off your solicitors, or I'll send your boss an email next. What would he think of all those business relationships you say you've given me? There was silence on the cue. Next, click. Rachel rushed into the office with a pale face as Sarah was still going through Donald's emails. You must see this immediately, Julia. She pushed her iPad across from me. A draft press statement from Donald's business announcing his elevation to chief financial officer effective next month was shown on the screen. All of a sudden, everything fell into place. The aggressive legal campaign, the deliberate actions with our finances, and the timing of his romance with Amber. It was more than simply abandoning me. Prior to his major promotion, he was cleaning house in an effort to protect his assets and reduce the amount of money he would lose in a divorce. There's more. Rachel flipped to a different page. Amber is not your typical girlfriend. She is the niece of the CEO. It seemed as though someone had hit me in the stomach. There was no younger lady that Donald had fallen in love with. In order to get promoted, he had planned a connection with the CEO's niece. The stolen money, the lake mansion, including the Emma-related threats. All of this was part of his plan to begin a new life with his ideal, well-connected young bride as a CFO. Sarah raised her head from her computer. I discovered something else, Julia. Donald has been involved in the corporate merger. One of your main rivals in business is involved. He will have access to information that might cause significant harm to your business if he is appointed CFO. I balled my hands into fists. Donald wasn't only attempting to harm me, he was setting up shop to demolish everything I had constructed. I thought about all those nights he'd spent in his home office claiming to be working on merger agreements. Instead, has he been looking through my business files? Verify the activities on my home network. I informed Rachel. Pay attention to any efforts to get access to my company's servers. Sarah discovered something more while Rachel was at work. Take a look at these 6-month-old emails that Donald and Amber exchanged. Even before Emma could walk, they were making plans for this. Amber wrote, "We can utilize the insider knowledge to force Julia's business out of the market once you're CFO. Uncle Robert promises to assist." The thought of them conspiring against me while I was taking care of our newborn baby made me feel nauseous. However, they had become careless due to their conceit. They had left a trail of evidence that may damage the CEO's reputation in addition to Donald's advancement. My thoughts were interrupted by Rachel's words. I located it. Donald's laptop made many attempts to access your company's servers. Although he tried, he was unable to breach your security. Corporate espionage is what that is. I got up and went to the window to see Emma play with her favorite plush elephant in her playpen. Donald believed he was very smart for securing his future through his connection with Amber. However, he had overlooked the most crucial business lesson. Sarah, you should never undervalue your opponent. I consult my lawyer once again. Write a letter to the board of directors of the firm and include proof of Donald's attempted corporate espionage and the CEO's use of insider knowledge against a rival. Include the security tape showing Donald robbing the lake cottage of business property. How about Amber? Rachel inquired. I grinned glumly. The way their CEO employed a family member to assist in planning corporate espionage would likely pique the board's curiosity. Do you not? My phone rang with a lake house security system alarm just as we were getting ready to send the email to the board. Donald had returned, and he was not by himself. Amber was not alone with him. Her uncle Robert, the CEO, was also present. They entered the house carrying boxes. More of my stuff, of course. Watching the live broadcast, I encouraged Sarah to wait. Let's first observe their actions. We could see them in the living room through the security cameras. The sound was really clear, another element that Donald was unaware of. Glasses in hand, they were enjoying champagne. For the aspiring CFO. To Donald and my lovely niece, who made it all possible, Robert lifted his glass. Julia doesn't know what's going to happen. Donald chuckled. The board will announce my promotion tomorrow morning, and by the afternoon, our legal team will have access to her company's financial records for auditing purposes. Her business will be useless in a month. What's the best part? Amber added her voice. Her biggest issue, in her opinion, is the lake house. Hold off until she learns of the offshore accounts. I went cold. Rachel. What? Offshore accounts. Rachel tapped her keyboard quickly. Her face darkened in a matter of minutes. Located them. For months, Donald has been transferring funds from your joint accounts to foreign assets. Not just the money for Emma's college. Somehow, he was able to divert about $300,000. I didn't realize how big this was. Donald wasn't only preparing to abandon me. For months, he had been routinely robbing our family. The drama surrounding the lake home was only a diversion from his larger plan. Robert then uttered something that chilled me to the bone. Once Julia's firm tanks, our merger goes through effortlessly. Our subsidiaries will share her market share, and her problematic ethical business model will be a thing of the past. In addition to becoming profitable, my company's dedication to fair labor and ecological methods was upending their whole sector. This went beyond Donald's romance and his promotion. Because it endangered their economic model, they sought to demolish what I had constructed. I instructed Sarah to send the email, but first add one more item. Go to Emma's birthday backup server password and attach the Mark insurance file. When Sarah opened the file, her eyes sprang wide. It had years' worth of records regarding dubious activities at Donald's business. Data that I had acquired while overseeing his financial account. I never imagined that I would need it. Therefore, I had saved it as insurance. Julia. Rachel looked at her screen and interrupted. Donald recently made another attempt to log into our company's servers from the lake residence. He's becoming desperate. I saw Donald excuse himself to the home office via the camera. My office at home? Our IT staff was prepared when he sat at my desk, most likely attempting to breach my company account once more. They'd established a phony doorway, letting him think he was succeeding. I told Rachel to let him in. Let him believe he is. Because their entire house of cards collapses in around 10 minutes after that board email is sent. Sarah raised her head from her computer. Are your emails ready? Shall I press the send button? I glanced at the security footage one final time. Robert, Donald, and Amber were still rejoicing over their fictitious triumph. Take action. The speed of the response exceeded my expectations. Robert's phone rang through the security stream just minutes after Sarah sent the email. As he listened to what I imagined was the board's initial response, We saw his face become pale. "Are you referring to an urgent meeting?" He called out into the telephone. What proof was sent by whom? Presumably checking his email, Donald reached for his own phone. He lost the color in his face. She knew the servers. Julia was aware of my attempt to gain access to them. It improves. As we watched the drama play out, I murmured to Sarah, "Await it." Amber's phone began exploding with alerts just in time. All of the board members had received anonymous private Facebook messages from her. The ones where she boasted that she had assisted Donald in stealing company data. The precise moment their joy descended into terror was captured on the surveillance camera. Robert yelled into his cell phone. Donald was hurriedly attempting to close his laptop and Amber was in tears, mascara flowing down her cheeks. The coup de grace followed, police vehicles driving up to the lake, home, lights blazing. It turns out that financial fraud and business espionage are significant offenses. Who could have known? As we watched via the cameras, I took Emma in my arms and hugged her close. Take a look at that newborn girl. That is the result of others undervaluing your mother. Before the broadcast stopped, the last thing I saw was Donald being released in handcuffs while continuing to yell that the home belonged to him. The aftermath was stunning. Robert and Donald were both dismissed within a day. The board's inquiry revealed years of fraudulent activities in addition to the conspiracy against my firm, which I was unaware of. Amber's promising influencer career was ruined by her involvement in corporate espionage. She had returned to Ohio to live with her parents, as far as I knew. Investigations were conducted, and the offshore accounts were blocked. Donald was given back all of the money he had taken, plus interest. As it turns out, trying to steal corporate property is a wonderful way to forfeit any property rights. The deed was moved to my name, as it ought to have been from the beginning. Donald made an effort to apologize, sending long emails explaining how he had lost himself and how a younger lady in power had tempted him. I never answered. The divorce documents were unambiguous. He lost everything he attempted to pilfer, plus more. He would never again work in finance because of the proof of his corporate espionage. In my case, following the controversy, even more investors were drawn to my firm because of its moral business practices. We entered markets that were previously controlled by Donald's firm. Customers who had lost trust in established organizations were drawn to us because of our reputation for integrity. We now spend weekends at the lake house, creating new memories with Emma. I sometimes think about Donald's arrogant email with that picture while I'm sitting on the balcony watching her play. He believed he was declaring triumph, but in reality, he was only recording the start of his demise. By the way, I saved that email. In my workplace, it is framed, a warning to never underestimate a lady who's established something worth defending.